6:32. We'll get started with the preliminaries. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and Governor Healy's March 29th, 2023 revised order extending remote participation by all members in any of the public body, this meeting of the Great Barrington Affordable Housing Trust will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may do so via Zoom. No in-person attendance or members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. All votes are roll call votes. Just for folks who can't see, in addition to the 5 members of the trust currently present, we have two attendees plus Eileen from the newsletter, so 3 in total. I call to order this meeting at 6:33, and we'll start with our first agenda item, which is a review and vote on the minutes from July and September. And I'll hand that over to Fred.
Mr. Garzone mentioned that he had spoken during the September 17th meeting, and I've added that. So I'm going to share my screen so that I can show that, except it's not as easy as it looks when you do this. Why can't I see this?
So while you're doing that, I will go ahead and make a motion to approve the August 20th minutes and September 17th minutes as amended.
I'll second.
Are there any other changes or amendments? Draft minutes, here we go. So those are the ones that aren't changed. So let's see. That is the meeting minutes of the 20th of August. That is no change. But oh crap. I don't know if you can see that. I can make it larger. I have a very big monitor, so it's really hard for me to relate.
That's good.
Under citizens speak, I've added the sentence, James Garzone asked that we all remain respectful of each other as we go forward on the Park Street property.
Is there any further discussion? I'll call a vote in the order I see you all on my screen. Fred Clark.
Yes.
Peter Most.
Yes.
Garfield.
Yes.
Bill.
Yes.
And Ananda. Yes. The minutes are approved unanimously. Fred, Chris Rembold is in the participants, the attendees panel. I don't know if you'd like to promote him. Trust related activities. The first item is North Plain Road Prosperity Way schedule. Fred, is that you?
It is.
Or both of you?
A couple things have happened. The tree removal and site clearing began late last week. It is quite dramatic for those of you who've driven past on North Plain Road. The site is dramatically opened up. I think they've been very very forthright in their construction. And so they're going forward with that, and they're starting to do the on-site landscaping and internal utilities. There was an article in the Berkshire Eagle by Claire Callahan about the groundbreaking, and I was interviewed by Spectrum One on site about the groundbreaking as well. And I think there's a lot of interest in this project, and we're looking forward to it moving along. To recap on the schedule, the contractor who we've worked with, the town has worked with successfully on a couple of other projects, plans to work on site this fall into the winter as weather permitting. And during that time, they're mostly going to do work reshaping the land as required, putting in the drainage and some of the utilities, and then probably shut down for a couple of months pending weather. Pick it up in the spring, and at that point, they'll start doing their off-site connections for water and sewer and electrical and things like that. At the same time, they will be putting in foundations for the first of the habitat houses. So those could be starting to be constructed as early as late spring. There. That's my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Fred? Moving on to 255 Park Street, Housatonic.
And as you recall at the last meeting, the members authorized the co-chairs to sign the purchase and sale agreement, which has been done. The town's environmental consultant has visited the site, and they are preparing an environmental assessment, which will be done probably in a couple of months. No other news to report.
So the
Fred,
earliest at which we'd move forward with the purchase would be January, is my understanding. Is that correct, Chris? Put him on the spot. He might not.
Yep.
It's what?
Yeah. Okay.
Yep, that's the earliest. The environmental, actually, I think the environmental contingency date is, I want to say second week, maybe mid-November. So we'll have the report by then. And then I think at the trust meeting in December, I think by then we'll have all the info you need so that we could proceed to closing either in December or in maybe January.
Great. Any questions on the Park Street parcel for Chris or Fred?
Yes, I guess I have one, seeing how I have a little boat power, the hot mic. Have the residents in that area kind of relaxed a little bit, I guess, just saying.
So, one, Brenda Bashon is here as a guest tonight. She owns property immediately adjacent to the site, and I know she's interested. We had a couple of the near neighbors reach out, one to me and one to Chris Rembold. Chris and I met with one neighbors from across the street, and basically I think they just wanted to understand the process of what was going forward, and they wanted to be heard. And I think that they were I don't know, I don't want to speak for them, but they seemed okay. Brenda,
Well, I think this is Chris. I just wanted to reiterate, whether they're okay or how they feel, and we can't speak for the neighbors. We have their contact information, and we'll just continue to remain in contact with them.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
And so I'd just like to state, process-wise, in terms of clarity, the only thing that's happening right now is the trust is purchasing the parcel, which means it will be restricted to affordable housing, and that will be in perpetuity. Beyond that, what the process looks like around deciding what goes on there, what's a fit for the neighborhood, all of that process is to be designed by the trust, with Chris's support. And as a public body in the town, it's our job to also hear input in that. So just to be clear that this is just one step in a process, and it doesn't have specifics of the end point built in yet.
I have to ask one thing, because I had someone ask me about the preference of people going into that new housing site. Is that not so that Great Barrington folks or people in South County would have a
Well,
first preference?
this is Chris. We'll work with the developers, whoever they might be, and make sure that we follow the law and provide as much preference as we can.
Garfield, are you asking about this site, or are you asking about the Habitat site?
I'm asking about actually the Habitat site. I had a gentleman ask me called me at home and wanted to know if the sites were people in the Great Barrington area were giving preferential treatment, and not being a federal site. And I hope I didn't misspoke. I said I believe that they do. So I wanted to be clear on that, and if I was incorrect, I wanted to make a correction when I spoke to this person.
So I have something I do want to say about that. But before then, Chris, is there anything you would like to clarify about any legal ramifications of what does have to be followed?
There are a lot of legal ramifications, and I can't speak in general, but I'm sorry, I can't speak on specific sites, but in general, we try to provide preference for people who are working in Great Barrington. And that's really the most I can say. The fair housing law says you can't discriminate. So we definitely need to follow the law. And what we do know from the Habitat site is that Habitat has been very successful in marketing the program, and they have quite a number of folks who live in the southern Berkshire County and Central County who are looking for housing. So that's about as much as we can say.
Great.
All right, well, let me just one more, because I want to follow up and I want to make sure I have this correct if I do again speak with this gentleman. So even though this is not federally funded, et cetera, we still have some guidelines, if you will, that doesn't.
We do.
Which is what you just stated, meaning you would like to give to people that work in Great Barrington, but you cannot. Discriminate, I guess would probably be the right word.
If I may, I would say our greatest tool in making sure that South County residents have access to any of the sites we're working on is making sure that the projects are marketed to people in South County, that the chamber is spreading the word, that there's information on the town website. That's the best way people from South County can make sure they have access to these sites, is that we're getting the word to them and they're putting applications in.
Thank you.
What I would add, because I know that this was a hot topic of conversation in summer 2023, is that for the new larger housing projects that finished in summer 2023 and before that, there was a perception that was majority folks from outside of the area that had moved in. But in actuality, I believe it was at minimum 70%. I think it may have been even higher than that, that were people who had lived in South County, needed housing, and were able to move into those units, and of course, they're all now South County residents. And I was speaking with Jane from Construct, and their wait list for South County people looking for housing in South County is close to 300. It's like in the 290s, I think.
Wow.
So there is ample need, and you know, not all of the housing is the right fit for everybody. Number of bedrooms, price point, etc. But I think that the more we are making sure that information is circulating in the community, the more the community can access the projects we're working on. Fred?
Well, I just want to say that there is a number of criteria that Habitat has that we did encounter during the Grove Street house, that they do follow the HUD guidelines. And local preference can be one contribution, I believe, but it may not be preeminent. If someone has, say, a larger family and you have a 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom house, you're not going to give it to somebody who doesn't have any children. It's one person, say. So there's a lot of different kinds of criteria that will come into play. The other thing is, Habitat has a lot of really good support systems. It's one of the reasons I'm so excited about working with them. And they are starting now with people getting qualified, getting their applications in, going through, they have a financial counseling program that they require, the help with the lining up financing and things like that. So if anybody is interested, now is the time to contact Habitat. And I believe we've shared that contact information already. If not, contact Habitat of Central Berkshire.
And that information is also on our website, correct, Bill?
Yes.
So people can go to the Great Barrington Affordable Housing Trust website and find access information about all of our programs and access points. Moving on to financial reporting, Fred, I think I still need permission to share my screen.
Oh,
That's okay. While you work on that, I'll just talk us through a few things. So
do you want me to share, or do you want to? You should be a co-host. I could share this financial if you prefer.
Yeah, I have permission now. That's fine. There we go. So this is the summary report that was sent for end of the first quarter to the Community Preservation Committee. The following page, this is our financial report. It reflects the vote in the September meeting for the acquisition falling in, that's an error. It should really show up in January, I guess the third quarter is correct for January, sorry. And following that is the detail on the sources. And Chris has kindly put a placeholder to remind us that there are short-term rental community impact funds that will be appropriated in the future, but they're not currently available.
Great.
Any questions about the financial report? Great. Moving on to talking about the CPA application. So step 1 of the application is coming up due at the start of November. We've previously discussed that we would use the same strategy we used last year, applying for the maximum amount that our share could possibly be, not our share, but the housing share could possibly be, and understanding that that is, that's a new concept for this town, but other towns do it. So what you're looking at on the screen right now is last year's application with some notes that I've added in, that I'll walk us through. We previously had voted on $500 budget last spring for working with the grant writer that I write with. We have $300 left in that budget line. So I've contacted him, or in that boat. So I've contacted him and he's willing to continue to work on this with me. Peter has kindly been willing to help draft some letters of support. The Chamber of Commerce is pleased to offer a letter of support. Will Curletti is willing to provide a letter of support. Construct would like to talk with Construct is interested in the possibility of submitting one application that's a joint application as a way to further support for the idea that the town fund the trust as the mechanism for affordable housing with CPA dollars. So that's just an overview of process. What you're looking at here, you'll see at the top, I think one of the things we need to add somehow in this first page, and Andy, the grant writer I work with, is working on that with me, is I think we'll need to, even though there's ample reports that the town has that demonstrate need, incorporating a summary of that there is need, because at some of the CPC meetings, there's been some comments indicating that like, maybe we don't need any more affordable housing. Maybe we've hit the 10% threshold. So I think it's important to bring that information into our application and make it really accessible and a reminder of the urgency and the need. And I think that's one of the reasons I reached out to the chamber, that it's an economic driver issue, not just, I mean, as if there's a just, but it's not separately just about people housing. It also has to do with our economy, the ability of businesses to hire, all of those things. So this is, these in some ways are placeholders. I think I want to start with the down payment loan program. Right now, what I'm hearing in conversation here and with Fred is that we're looking at the start of the next fiscal year that we would have 10 people ready to be in the purchase process for the North Plain site. And so that would be a sizable amount of our application to ensure that there's down payment assistance loans available. Let me just finish the overview and then let's open discussion. The other thing that I think we should discuss, but I think is strategically an important priority for this application, is that we do include in our budget a request for funding for property acquisition, because the CPA funds allow us to move quickly outside of, and did I get that right, Bill? Is it Chapter 30B?
Yeah, it's one of the
I always forget
best things about this. Yeah, yeah. Yes, we can cut a deal without having to go through
right.
all the red tape you would have to go through to get grant funding or whatever. Yeah.
And then I think if our argument is to be the main funding body for affordable housing in the town, it makes sense for us to be including in our request some funds towards making grants like we did for the Curletti project. But this might be a place where we think about this is a good place to use the short-term rental matching funds as part of the overall budget for FY26. If we're going to be collaborating on a single application with Construct, obviously we will need to be committing to the emergency rental assistance, and the amount will probably need to be shaped with Construct. But that represents what we've done in the past. And then I also put funding in for a next phase of the ADU project. So that's my overview. I'll open this.
Maybe just a clerical error. I think that should be short term, not short term.
I am sure that it should be.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, like I said, this is a document I'm using as part of my writing process that has notes in it that I'm sharing as opposed to a finished document. So Fred, I see you have your hand up.
One thing that we may add is that will come likely in fiscal 26 is a feasibility study for the Park Street land. We have a proposal right now. It's about $15,000. I can share that with you. I want to talk to this group about making an application to Mass Housing Partnership, MHP, who are our support group that have some grant money for that sort of feasibility study. But we may also want to have a listening session, like a charrette or something that people can come together and have a moderator or somebody guide us, perhaps from MHP. So it's unclear whether we will obtain that. I'd like to think that, I think that we need to think about budgeting $15,000.
So what I would say, my advice would be, and how I would want to pursue that is at this stage of application process. I think that's a really good thing to put in as matching funds you're seeking. Because this, like we've talked about before, the CPC process is it requires such planning so far ahead. And they are really interested in seeing where we are able to go after grant funds and funds outside of just tax dollars from the town of Great Barrington. And I think that's a really good opportunity for that.
But the other part of that is it's a very real need that we're going to have, an expense, and I have a proposal for it. So I know exactly how much money we would spend, and
Can you say
having,
that amount again?
I'm sorry,
Can you say the amount again?
15,000.
That's what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure.
I believe it's 14,950 or something like that. But given that we are in the process of trying to purchase the land, in order to make that real, we need eventually to do the feasibility study before we can develop anything, before we even have an idea of where we're going. So that's one. Regarding the down payment loans, that 10 at 25,000 is a big number. And it's going to end up being a very large chunk of any potential budget that we would have in that year. I do think, talking to Habitat, that it's likely that they'll be trying to build and occupy 10 homes in fiscal 26. There's no promise, if you will, that we give a grant of $25,000. Our program says up 10% of housing purchase price, up to $25,000. And if we don't have the money, we could cut that back to 15,000 or 20,000 and still make a big help for a family going into build a house or buy their first house. So the other thing I'll say, and maybe Garfield can confirm, last winter was a very, very tough budget year. Everybody who's talked about the budget this year in Great Barrington says that it's also going to be a very, very tough budget year.
Yes, it will be.
CPA has had a couple of meetings and they made a statement that their primary grants are going to be going to town-based projects this year. So I'm not sure what that means when you come to a town committee that's focused on affordable housing. But I know that there's a number of other historic and open space requests that will be coming before the CPA that are town-based.
Thank you, Fred. Other questions or comments?
I thought we could include with the property acquisition initiative, the fact that the Eagleton School, 11 acres out there, came on the market recently and would be a great place to put a lot of housing.
Wow.
It's somewhere around 600,000 and change for 11 acres plus a bunch of buildings.
Wow.
If the trust had that kind of money, we could prevent the developer from getting in and putting
What is on the market for?
600,000 and change, somewhere around there. It's a lot of property.
Giving it away.
So were you proposing that we not do any of these other programs, but that we just make a request to purchase that in 18?
No, I'm just saying, if the trust had been funded all along and had already built up a fund of, you know, $500,000 or $1 million, we'd be in a position to buy something like that. So it's just something to let them know that there are properties that come out that would be suitable for affordable housing, that if we're funded, we can buy. If we're not funded, we can't buy them. That's all.
I understand. Thank you.
I have a question. Is there any, can I speak?
Yep.
Okay. Is there any, that's perfect. That's pretty inexpensive for all that property and all those buildings. I don't know if there's, I know what Bill said, but I don't know if there's a way we can, I don't know, plead our case now or make known what good it can be for the town. Or?
We don't have anything close to that in the budget. But I think, you know, to Bill's point, being able to speak to this is the vision we have for the trust, being able to move quickly on properties like that.
Right, but as he said, this would keep developers from, and maybe can't we stress that to CBA or whomever the alphabet is?
What I'm saying, my counterpoint to that is this application process that we're starting now, whatever we apply for, and then whatever we get will only be available at July 1 of 2025. So that's a lot of time between when something goes on the market. And so I wouldn't put in an application focused on something that's on the market.
I wasn't recommending that.
No, I heard you say that. I'm more responding to Garfield. Like, I would like us to be in a position to be able to look at those things. Right now, in our community, we don't have that kind of funding.
On a project like that, we may think about partnering with another group to use our assets and their assets to combine something. So, I mean, it's a lot of money, but it's not necessarily out of reach.
Right. I see something like that as that would fall under item 4, the affordable housing development, that a partnering agency could approach us with a project and seek funding towards a larger purchase.
Let me just say this again, because finances that's not my thing. I'm not going to kid about it. But boy, oh boy, it sure seems like something we should really make a strong argument against, with especially how housing is. Why would we want to let a developer in there? Can't we convince or try to talk to the town?
We only have $13,000.
No, I'm not. I understand that. I'm just saying that can't we? I get that we don't have the money right now. I understand that, but isn't there some way? Again, I don't know, but I can't believe that we can't approach someone and say, look, this can save the town a lot of concern about where people will live. Here's a $600,000 property with 11 places in it or more that could benefit the town. I don't know, but that's just what it seems. It appears that it could certainly be. It could certainly benefit us quite handsomely. That's all. I guess maybe it's a pipe dream.
Well, no, I mean, to your point, Garfield, if there are other organizations that are interested in taking the lead, then maybe it's not a pipe dream, but it is a pipe, like it's not within our capacity to take the lead on something at this moment. Christina?
Too bad.
It is-
What I wanted to say that I just sent the link to Fred. It's a you know what? Sorry, this is an article from 2018 by Heather Bellow about the Eagleston School for sale, and the prices are different. So, but I just noticed it's from 2018, so it's a different story. Sorry about this. It was just a very different pricing that Bill said, but it's an old article.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments on the step one part of the CPA application process?
What's step two?
Well, step two is the real application. So in many ways, this functions as a notice of intent or a letter of intent. And then step two includes this page again with a robust application, including a budget. There's specific questions that need to be answered in a narrative, an opportunity to provide letters of support or other appendices. And so that's where the robust part of the application is. But in step one, I will go I will go and be present at the meeting, and they do ask questions. And then that happens again in step two.
Do we know
Yeah, go
the
ahead.
amount of available CPA funds for the next fiscal year?
Rumor has it that it's around 800,000.
Is it your intent to start a dialogue towards the maximum or near the maximum affordable housing funds allowed?
I mean, this does that. Like, this follows that strategy from last year. And I mean, and I'm doing that with my understanding that that's something that the trust would like to continue to advance that conversation. If this would be a good time for me to know if that is a misunderstanding, but from the last time we talked about it, that was my understanding. And this allocation would put us pretty much right up against that. I do, to your point, Fred, I don't think this is, number one, this is definitely not a shoo-in. Number two, I think we're in the beginning of maybe gaining some goodwill and shifting the relationship with the CPC that was a bit bumpy. And it could be just as bumpy this go around. It depends. In terms of the down payment loans, one of the things I was going to say, hearing your thoughts, Fred, was, I think that while it's a lot, I think it's worth putting it in the request. What we end up needing to do based on how we're funded might be different. But one of the reasons I think it's valuable to put in the request was because one of the CPC members last year had spoke openly in the meeting that this is something they'd like to see. And to me, it's a win-win when you have somebody on a deciding body who's saying they want to see something that's in line with something you already do. So I think it's worth us including it in the application, but what we end up, how we have to actually budget will be based on where we are in the spring, and how we're funded, not on our application ideas right now. Anything else related to this? All right. I will stop sharing. And that brings us to the ADU pilot program. I'm very pleased to share with you all that it has been reviewed, and Chris and I went through it also. And what's included in your packet is the final version of the program overview, as well as the rubric for how applicants will be selected. Chris is drafting an MOU with Construct, who will be the program administrator at the fee we set. And Construct is prepared to launch applications November 1st. They will have a fact sheet on their website alongside the application. And then according to what we outlined, it'll be a three-month open window for applications before the decisions will be made and projects selected. Bill, I know that you are ready to go with the press release and all of the materials that we had discussed.
Yeah.
In the
That's right.
Christina, do you have a question?
I have a question. I'm sure there was answered before, but I keep on wanting to the different answer, I guess. Does this ADU only applies to Great Barrington area, or it can be also in Sheffield or Egremont and stuff like this?
We are the Great Barrington Affordable Housing Trust, and we're limited to the municipality.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Just to let you all see, anything in blue is something where there was an edit made that I thought was worth you all just being able to see where the edits were. It's mostly just refining language. I really just wanted to get to this section, this page, so we could just go through the public relations and marketing, because that's the part that's our job next. Is that large enough, Bill? You're muted.
Sorry, it could be a little larger, but
Very easy to make it a little larger.
Now it's too large. Now it's not visible, the whole thing, as far as
And I'm trying to adjust oh, it's not letting me adjust the size of the window because it's sharing, but
that's good.
I guess it just wants to do one or the other. And I can't at this moment, but this is you and Joe worked on preparing the marketing materials. Is there anything you want to walk us all through?
No, I'd have to dig it all out. But we had some flyers made up. We had some social media announcements made up. They would all link back to probably either directly to the Construct site or to a web page that then bounces them to a Construct site, I would imagine.
Okay.
Construct will have all of the application materials and all of that, I'm assuming.
Yeah, the application will be on their website. So just a reminder that the document we're looking at is basically the program design. So we're not like releasing an RFP. There'll be an actual application that Construct has designed to gather all the information that we've outlined needs to be assessed.
Mm-hmm.
So when will the press release go out? Do you need to coordinate any further with Jane?
I think it can go on anytime now if they have it up. I guess as soon as it's up on their website.
So
And I
do
don't
you
want to put
wanna-
out a
I
press
think you're on
release.
that thread with Jane and the person at Construct that's working directly on this. So do you want to just confirm with both of them that their website's ready and then send it out?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things we listed was an in-person information session. Do we need to make plans for that?
We probably ought to, but
Maybe that's something we can partner with the person who's working on it at Construct to be present for.
Yeah. Is that something we're sending out invitations to? I mean,
I don't know. I think
I didn't
it
know we
depends
were doing an
what you
in-person thing.
and show vision.
Yeah. I hadn't considered that.
So so you're saying that November 1st is like when it's live?
Yep, and then it will be open for 3 months before selection so that people have plenty of time to explore financing options, create a plan.
So I would do something like do the initial announcements and then towards the end of November plan for something like last week of November.
Okay, and is that something that you and Bill have the capacity to plan with Construct?
Yeah,
Person.
when we have the contact. So
Yeah, Bill, you're on that thread. Can you loop Joe in?
Sure.
That would be great. We're almost there, people. Finally. Any other questions related to launching the ADU pilot? Or
can we just look at the one part of the language that talked about administration issues?
Are you thinking?
It's the blue block on page 12. Yeah. So basically, like the way I read that, it just says like, if there's a legal issue, we'll talk to the lawyers again. Or like if we have any uncertainty, we'll talk to the lawyers.
Yeah, Chris, you and I talked about this a little bit. And I feel like you had a concrete thought about how you'd like this part to go.
Oh, I wish I had that on the tip of my tongue.
So I think that what you said to me was that you saw it as when you get to the point where you're looking at how to structure the loan, that's the point you'd want to do a consultation. And if an issue occurred that raised the question of Mrs. Murphy's role, to review it in the specifics of the situation.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yep.
Peter?
What is Mrs. Murphy's role?
I am not a housing lawyer.
So
this is
can
a very lay person's understanding. Do you want to go ahead, Joe, who is also not a housing lawyer, but has a understanding?
My understanding is it's a little bit awkward. Mrs. Murphy was like a bigot, and she did not, and she was receiving a subsidy for assisted for affordable housing, and so she basically said like, well, I'm a little homeowner, and I need this. So in other words,
I think I don't think that's quite it. So
I've Googled it.
No, she's not real. It's a hypothetical. So no, I'm serious. The hypothetical Mrs. Murphy, set in her ways of bigotry, runs a small bed and breakfast to help pay the bills. she worries that her white guests may not like sharing a space with racial minorities, so she only chooses tenants who are white. So that's what I'm saying. It's a
That's not where this discussion came up. This discussion comes up around if you are a homeowner. In our context, this discussion comes up around if you're a homeowner and you're adding an ADU, do you have to follow all of, like, what leeway do you have for deciding who's living in, like, on your property with you? And that leeway is slightly different for something like an ADU that's on your property with you. That's the Mrs. Murphy's rule carve out. So in our case, the reason this came up was around the question of if, if a couple added an ADU with the goal of being able to move their, one of their mothers into it who is income qualified, would they be allowed to do that? And under regular housing situations, public dollars might prevent that, but under Mrs. Murphy's rule, they might allow that because it's in the residential property.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm not trying to prejudice. Well, I'm just trying to say like literally what it is. That's literally what it is. I think it might be okay, but like what it is that if there are fair housing standards, and so it's like civil, like sex, religion, familial status, disabilities. So like for one example, if you're this like small homeowner situation, you might say, I can't have a service dog in my house. So right. That's what Mrs. Murphy's rule, but it's broad. It's for all the categories of like fair housing standards. So in this case, the issue, so I'm not saying like, I'm not trying to be inflammatory. I'm saying like, that's literally what it is. It's from 1964. It's from the
I understand.
That's the Civil Rights Act. And I think it was like a Southern senator arguing for it. But in this case, the issue that was brought up by, I want to say Mass Housing Association, they were very against it. This is where it came up, is that they were saying that in this case, we are using public funds to create an affordable unit. And that if you allow someone to use public funds to create a ADU, and then they immediately turn around and rent to their own relatives, that becomes, they're basically privatizing the public funds and privatizing the subsidy to benefit someone that they know. So I don't know totally how. I'm just trying to surface the actual issue behind Mrs. Murphy's rule. It's not like a right down the center, like obvious thing.
Right. So I mean, it would basically come up around issues related to who a homeowner is comfortable renting to, and at what point are they legitimate. And right. The way the lawyer would like us to handle that is to refer those questions as they occur.
So my question with that is like, how do we even, like, who watches the watchers in this case? Like who, like
differently?
Who, like, is Construct going to be monitoring applications to make sure that there aren't relatives involved? Are they going to, like, will they notice if the person they're renting to has the same last name? Do they care? So like the way that it was proposed that you
so I would say that as the administrator, it would be their responsibility to identify where this could be an issue and refer it to Chris for town council.
So what I'm saying is that if they're getting $5,000, so they may or may not feel like that's a high priority for them to do based on how we direct them.
Well, they are, I mean, the reason we're working with them is because this is handling applications related to housing, handling income verifications are all and they already have practice in. And And so I mean, are you asking for something to be different?
I think it's okay. I think I understand I think I understand the inclusion. My actual like preference looking at that is that we wouldn't mention Miss Murphy's rules and just say including applicability of fair housing to loan applicants and program participants. Because it's like sort of that standard is, like I said, it's a contested standard, and it's not clear that we would want to invoke it. I don't know. I'm interested if anyone else.
I mean, I read this as this says what to do. Like this says what to do in situations that would relate to Mrs. Murphy's rule, rather than it says how, rather than invoking that it's allowable or not allowable.
Recording in progress.
Yeah. I'm getting echo. Yeah, I mean, I think maybe.
And this was, I mean, this is the language the town council drafted. So
they suggested it.
This is their language.
So they said
we handed something to them that gave them an opportunity to just resolve these issues at the front end, and this is how they wanted it to be, rather than resolve it at the front end. And our agreement as a trust was, what we voted on was that we would take town council's recommendations in this area.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I guess one other, I'm interested to hear if other members have any reaction to it. I'll just say one thing is that, like, since it's basically saying go ahead and refer back to town council, we've had issues of timeliness. So I'm just kind of worried about that as well.
No, that's fair. Chris, do you want to respond to that in any way?
Point taken, Joseph. Thank you.
Eileen Mooney has a question related to this, or a comment. I'm gonna go ahead and allow you to talk, Eileen.
How many readers of this will know what Mrs. Murphy's rule is?
So this document is not an RFP, and it is not the application. So this document guides, it lays out exactly what the trust intends and has agreed to, and it is guidance for the administrator, which is Construct. So Construct needs to understand this. We need to understand this, and Chris needs to understand this.
It is a public document, though.
It is a public
document. Members of the board who didn't understand it.
It's a public document, but it's not, to access this program, applicants do not need to have working knowledge of all of the details of this document. The job of Construct is to make the information in this document.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Anything else on this, or can we move on?
We can move.
This brings us to planning board review of mobile home and tiny house letters.
So this is me again. I have to switch to headphones because Karen's on Zoom, so give me a second.
Joe, were you also able to attend?
I was.
Hi, it's Fred again, if you can hear me.
Yep.
Yes.
I attended the planning board 2 weeks ago and presented, we had sent them letters one last spring regarding the mobile home that Joe had worked on. And the second one, a follow-up that Peter and Joe had worked on regarding an additional part about mobile homes and tiny houses. At the meeting last spring, a couple of members were missing from the planning board, so the discussion didn't go into depth. The planning board asked what was the interest of the Affordable Housing Trust? What were we seeking? And they asked what was our specific request and what change are we looking for? And I, as best I understood the issue, we, the Affordable Housing Trust, were suggesting that mobile homes could be a less expensive ADU alternative, and that quality and appearance of mobile homes had improved, and they're very close to what you would find in a modular home, or in other words, a factory built home. When we talked about tiny houses, all of the Great Barrington regulations define a tiny house as up to 400 square feet, and mobile homes begin at 500 square feet. So it felt like to us there was a gap between the 400 and 500 square feet that we asked them to resolve. The planning board pushed back. They said that they would like to see examples of how mobile homes have improved. They'd like photographic evidence for us to show that to them. They also pushed back on the expansion of tiny houses to 500 square feet by stating that if a tiny house is 8 foot wide to be able to travel down the highway, then a 500 square foot house would be totally impractical. They also requested that we provide examples of what a 500 square foot tiny house would look like, again with photos. Subsequent to that, I did some research on tiny houses, and it seems industry-wide, the 400 square foot description seems to be the standard, and in all the model codes. And I think that that's probably, rather than try to invent it, we should try to stick with that. The planning board has asked us for follow-up. Again, they are not meeting this Thursday night, and we'd have to, get on the agenda there. But if the people who developed this have additional comments so that we can either continue the discussion or bring it to a closure, that would be great. And I appreciate it if you guys could be there, either on Zoom or in person. Because I kind of wasn't as well informed as I'd hoped I'd be. Wasn't able to argue for it.
Peter, the reason you had brought up the 500 square feet was there a standard you were seeing that was 500 square feet?
So tiny houses on average are 400 square feet. Sometimes they're considered as large as 600 square feet. And in Googling around, if that's a word, I identified some that looked nicer at 500 square feet and seemed a lot more livable. I've also chatted with planning board member, excuse me, who think that the planning board is generally against the tiny houses as not livable space. So I don't know that it's worth pushing back on the difference between 400 and 500. And I grant that Fred is right. They are mostly 400, although there are nicer ones that are 500. I was looking to try to find a something somewhat more livable that somebody might be able to afford, that might fit a budget, fit a small lot. But this just might be a dream of mine.
Chris, in our bylaws, tiny houses are approved under ADUs.
Tiny
So-
houses can be a form of an ADU, yes.
So I guess I just have a question about, like, in what way are the regulations for tiny houses or the zoning laws for tiny houses different than or specific to tiny houses?
Tiny houses can be allowed as ADUs, which are accessory to the primary use, which is either a single unit
I
household
think I can answer that.
or a 2-unit household on the lot. But there's no such thing as a tiny home park that can exist as its own use of a lot, like a mobile home park. And that was part of the trust letter, was to consider why the bylaw is structured that way, to prohibit mobile home parks, I believe. And that prohibits mobile homes as something that can't be allowed on its own for more than, I think, 6 months emergency basis.
I,
So
I
there-
didn't I didn't think we were talking about any kind of a park or
Fred, I think that what Chris is saying is that the why behind our bylaws is to prevent parks.
but I don't agree with that.
I mean, you don't agree with that's the why, or you don't agree with preventing?
No, I don't agree with that. That's the why. So basically, so we have the table of use in the zoning bylaw. And the zoning bylaw has a separate line for mobile. Well, I know we've got like 3 things juggling, so it's a little confusing, but in the table of use, there's a separate line for mobile park, right? Mobile home park, trailer park. And I believe it just says no. Or maybe it says, I don't know. But then there's a separate thing that doesn't speak about park. It just talks about mobile home. And it says you may not have a mobile home except under emergency conditions. So it's like the emergency condition would be like your house burned down. You want to put a mobile home there while you're building your new house. And so you would be allowed to do that for like 6 months with like a exemption to 12 months or something. And so like, I think in my letters, I've just been a little bit too roundabout and circumspect, in part because I was trying to be just like the like conversation starter, but like literally what, like I would like be happy if this year they just struck 8.6.1, because 8.6.1 says, as a temporary dwelling, 1 trailer, recreational vehicle, or mobile home may be permitted and used as a dwelling on any standard lot. So a standard lot, not a mobile home zoned lot, for not more than 60 days in any 12-month period. A permit, so it's like you can have your mobile home for 60 days, and that would still, and you need a permit from the building inspector is required. The special permit granting authority may, however, allow use for a longer period of time by special permit in hardship cases, provided that a time limit of 12 months is imposed as part of the authorization. And the special permit granting authority is the select board. So when you look at,
Are you able to go to a meeting and advance this conversation?
absolutely, yeah. But what, I mean, I would just say,
Like what the trust was really asking was that the planning board look at this issue, look at it as an equity issue, and look into it and make a decision. And it sounds like what they want is for us to make a case, which is not what we agreed to do as a body. I'm fine, like if you going, and I'm just one member of the trust, right? But if us participating in Joe going and furthering this conversation helps them make that assessment, I think that's a good idea. And I would support you to do that, Joe.
yeah, I mean, I think that what I can do is, so first of all, speaking of open meeting law, I think if I say now in the meeting that I am going to write an email to Brandy and say that I would like to speak at a future meeting. Not even as a representative of the board, but just based, I mean, I don't need that. I'll just go and talk to them.
Mhm.
And it's not my opinion. I think she'd be like, yes, that sounds good. And I'm just saying, so if I say that, I'm not creating a subcommittee because I'm one person. And if we said like 2 people go and draft something, that would be creating a subcommittee.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that. So I think I'm just gonna write an email to Brandy saying, I mean, I'm gonna do it in my own capacity, but I'm just letting the board know. It's gonna say what my first ask is to remove this language about you can only have it up to 12 months. So that's the first one. The second one is consider trying to change the permit granting authority to the planning board. And I'm just going to delink those and say those are 2 separate issues. So I would be happy if they remove this restriction, and then I'm just going to say it would be nice if they moved it to the planning board. And my argument will be that by doing that, I believe, I don't know if that would allow a mobile home to be an ADU by default, but it would allow it maybe to be a secondary residence on the same lot. But that's the argument that I'm going to make to them.
Fred?
Having started this as representing the Affordable Housing Trust, I think it needs to at least be brought to a conclusion as to what the Affordable Housing Trust is doing. If you're saying you're going to go there as a private individual and express your opinions, I think that's one thing, but we did it under the cover and under the rubric, under the umbrella of the Affordable Housing Trust, and they've asked some questions legitimately, and I think we need to at least draft a letter answering those questions. The letter can say, we understand and we know, do not care to push it any further, but we need to bring it to closure. That's my opinion. And again, I'm only one member, but if we talk about something as the Affordable Housing Trust, we need to be clear as to what we're speaking about and who we're
Right.
speaking for.
So with that in mind, with that thought in mind, on the issue of requesting them to consider moving from 400 square feet to 500 square feet for tiny houses, do you, as a group, do we feel that we're happy with keeping that at 400, that in line with Peter's comment that that 100 square feet may not be the best place to put our energy? Is that a fair characterization, Peter?
It is. I would second what you just said.
Okay.
So,
Bill, where do you fall on that?
I agree myself. It's not to put our eggs in that basket of 500 feet.
Garfield, were you saying you would like us to go back to them and push for 500 feet, or you're fine?
I'm saying no, not to.
Great, okay. Bill?
would people be comfortable with me putting together basically the statements that I
Well,
talked
hang on,
about?
Joe, I want to get everybody's temperature on the 400 square feet, and then I want to go back to the mobile homes.
Okay.
So, Bill, are you comfortable letting go of the 500 square feet, stay at 4?
Yes.
Christina?
Not really, but
Mm.
And is it a not really where you'd be interested in putting energy into that?
which means what? Finding a different designs and
It would mean attending a meeting and speaking and making the argument.
when is the meeting?
Second and fourth Thursdays.
I'm still looking for a car. My car was stolen, so
I mean, it's something we could always return to, but it doesn't sound like right now we have somebody who would put energy and time into that.
yeah.
So I'd like,
In the future, I would love to.
yeah, so I would like to propose that that our response on the tiny houses is, we heard you, we'd like to keep the door open for further conversation, but for now,
So
let's let this be. Yes, Fred?
what I want to, some of the literature that I've been seeing more recently is that many of the larger tiny houses are being built to dual codes. That is, tiny houses by definition are built to the RV code to go over the road, which is a less stringent energy code than a stick-built house. But many of the tiny houses are now building them to regular building code standards as well as the RV code.
Mm.
In that case, they are not tiny houses anymore. They're modular houses at 400 to 500 square feet. And I think that's
So
where I'm comfortable
want to
with.
go back and do you want to make the case for 500 square feet?
No, because I don't think you need any additional permission. If you're building a house that's 500 square feet that's built to the building code, it's just a small house. It doesn't fall under the definition of tiny house, which by definition is built to a different code.
Okay, so let's leave that. And now Joe, let's talk about the mobile, yeah, the mobile homes.
I guess-
So
I
go
guess
ahead.
What I'm
I just
asking,
mindful
what
of time.
I'm asking is, would the board be comfortable with me putting together a presentation for the planning board that would be basically that would be basically limited to what we've talked about, which is what I'm saying. One, removing 8.6.1, the restriction. Two, suggesting the change of the permit granting authority. Three, basically just like a PowerPoint showing examples of movable houses.
By the way, I am seeing incredible mobile homes, beautiful designs that nobody would have a problem here with. So I could send you some links, Joe.
Sure. Yeah.
Um,
But
so
yes, would the
to
board be comfortable?
Joe's question, let's just answer Joe's question. I would like us to try to wrap this up because we need to leave time for trustees speak, citizens speak, and media time, and we also conclude at 8. So we have 11 minutes. Garfield, do you have a comment, and can you include in your comment your response to Joe? Are you comfortable with him representing what the trust has discussed so far?
I am comfortable with him discussing it. My concern is the length of time. The issue was you don't want it to be, what was it, 6 months or 60 days? But if it's going to be 2 years, that's not going to be long enough for anyone to live in a home or stay in a home or be comfortable and know they have to be out in 2 years. So I'm not sure, and I'm going to be quite frank, I've not been a proponent of the ADUs or tiny homes because I haven't seen or heard, and I could be wrong, anybody knocking down the door and say, I want to do that. So I'm concerned about whether or not we're spinning our wheels anyway.
Well, at this point, we're talking about mobile homes. And we're talking about asking the planning board to reconsider the town's regulation of them to make them a viable housing option for people in Great Barrington.
I don't have a problem with that because that might be the way things have to go. People have to get a grip on reality. And this is what our housing future is not looking very good at all. We have people paying $1,000 for a room at Thornwood.
That's
And
right.
what's that tell you?
Exactly. So I'd like to quickly go through the other board members. Fred, are you okay with Joe representing what we've discussed so far?
I will never vote for it as in its current form. I don't think that it should be part of the Affordable Housing Trust. And I have a history with, unfortunately, I have a history with the permit granting authority that goes back to town meeting about 5 years ago. I do think that we need to go back to the planning board and have closure. And I think,
This is the vehicle for that.
this is a vehicle for that. The planning board has asked what we're asking for. This is a response to that. So yes, I think we should go back to the planning board. I personally will never vote for it.
I kind of misconstrued one of my questions here, and I wanted to know why.
Tight on time. Can I finish going through?
Yeah.
Christina, are you okay with Joe going to and representing our discussions?
Yes.
And Bill
Yes, I would.
and Peter?
I fully support that.
Great. And Joe, I'm fine with that. I just want to reiterate that my understanding is what we are in agreement on as a board is the request that they seriously consider this, that they look at the issues involved. They are the correct body to make the decisions. I'm completely comfortable with you making an argument for why it's worth considering and what the issues are as you see them and as we've discussed. Garfield, you'll be our last comment before we move. We'll need to table a couple of things and move to trustee speak.
Okay, I'm not sure why Joe wants to change the power of who makes the suggestion, if you will. I think the select board would be an easier sell because it seems like we already have opposition from the planning board. So I don't know if we want to make them the governing body, if you will, when it's going to be an issue. I think the select board would be much more willing to listen and be open. That's my opinion.
And now that you've stated it, Joe can include that in what the trust has discussed.
Okay.
We will need to table the planning board, the master plan review and the planning board preliminary cottage housing discussion. I propose that we put them at the front end of our next agenda. If that works for you, Fred.
Yeah, there's not much substance in either one.
Great. Trustees speak. Citizens speak. James.
Good evening, board. This is James Garzone, 84 North Plain Road. First, I want to say thanks, Fred, for making the amendment to the minutes. Appreciate it. Second, talks about the CPA. If the CPA, once again, does not grant a significant portion, or not even significant, the portion that's allowed to go to the Affordable Housing Trust, which the citizens voted to create, I strongly urge a citizen's petition to make this happen. Unfortunately, as everyone knows, or if you don't, I'm not a voting person in the town. I am a second homeowner, which is the problem, we all talk about. I'm being facetious. Can we please have a citizen's petition to move this item to force a CPA? Because the CP or CPC, in my opinion, is holding the Affordable Housing Trust at bay, where other communities know to give the Affordable Housing Trust the money. And this is why citizens pay the 3%, right? We pay this money specifically for that portion to go to you to do your work that you were entrusted to do. So I get very frustrated when I hear these CPC calls that continues to say no, that they're going to be the decision makers as to where the Affordable Housing Trust money should go. To me, it's being held hostage for no reason. Last year or the year before, they said because the governance wasn't strong. Okay, you fixed that. You have clearly demonstrated there's a structured governance, financial reporting. That is not in question anymore. So if I hear again this year the same excuse, and you once again not being given the tools that you need, that you were voted for, I ask for someone to create a citizen petition to make this happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments? Moving on to media time. Eileen, do you have any additional comments? All right, hearing none, our next meeting is November 19th at 6:30 p.m. What's the phrase for adjourning by unanimous consent?
That sounds good.
Hearing no objections.
There you go.
Eileen, yes.
You're muted.
On mute.
Sorry, I hit the wrong key.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Goodbye.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Nice meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.